Welcome, everybody. Let's start out with why we're here today. One of the most common things we see, or that we live in fear of, I should say, are warning letters or inspections being conducted. And I know we have a global audience today, so certainly we're still aware of these in terms of if we're doing an IND study sponsored by any United States or U.S. organization, so an investigational new drug trial that would be overseen by FDA or FDA regulations. But more and more commonly now we're seeing joint inspections. There is an initiative to do even more joint inspections between EMA, FDA, and PMDA in the next 5 years. So they're really looking at what is that going to mean. So the concept is really that even though we have to adhere to very specific regulations within one country, we're really operating at a global level. And especially with changes coming in ICH E6, the new version has been drafted and will be effective next November 2016. Again, what we're looking at is standardizing how we do research on a global level. So what we see is this wording, "you failed." And when we see these letters addressed, it doesn't matter who at the site made a mistake or who was delegated to perform a task. These letters are always written to the principal investigator. And so our target really needs to be to ensure that our investigators are aware of the responsibilities and obligations that they take on when they take on a clinical research trial. And investigators take on research for a multitude of reasons. That is one of the challenges that we see, is that some of them are just interested in publication. Some of them think it would be nice to offer to their patients to have research studies. Some of them are interested in the prestige. But very few of them, when they become an investigator for a clinical research trial and take on the responsibility of principal investigator, really understand how much work it's going to take. So again, one of the most important pieces is to make sure that our investigators really understand what they've agreed to and that they will be held accountable. Because oftentimes during our investigator meetings, when we're doing our training for everybody and we get to that GCP section, what I often see is that investigators think, oh, this is a good time to check my email, or a good time to return phone calls. And a good number of them stand up and leave the room or start looking at their phones. There's not a concept that this is for them. They are the most important individuals to understand GCPs. They may delegate a number of tasks, but when the letters come out, it will say, you failed to assure that an institutional review board reviews its study. You failed to maintain adequate and accurate case histories, and you failed to ensure the investigation was conducted according to the investigational plan. So one of the challenges I think that we face is how do we train our investigators, how do we get their attention, and honestly, providing some of this information to them right away can be helpful, letting them know that in the event of an inspection, those results are basically public record forevermore. So it's not that they're just doing a study and if they make a mistake, they can fix it or just decide they're never going to do research again because it's too much work. Well, on top of that, their reputations will be damaged. And they can certainly respond, they can certainly change their practices, but those letters, those findings will not go away. So the risk of investigator compliance issues really is equal to the risk of product development success. And one of the greatest risks to sponsors is the lack of formal systems to manage compliance at research sites. And there's been a number of citations in the past few years for sponsors who have delegated to CROs that sponsors did not provide adequate oversight or did not take actions to bring investigators into compliance. So per the regulations, per ICH GCP and also per FDA regulations, the expectation is that if an investigator is not compliant, actions are taken. And that doesn't just mean somebody acknowledged it. It doesn't just mean that a monitor puts in their report, deviations noted. It means that actions are taken until the investigator is brought into compliance or investigational product shipment is halted or product is seized or the trial is closed at an investigator's site. And that is the expectation. Very rarely do we get to that extreme, but that's what the regulations say. But what we do instead is monitors note something and they document it and they tell the site to fix it or address it or report the deviations, and they come back 4 weeks later, and they note the same thing again. Please submit these deviations to the IRB. They report the new deviations, and action is not actually taken to bring investigators into compliance. What we really need to think about is what would it take documentation-wise to demonstrate that we are bringing our sites into compliance.